So there's this page in the F1 YouTubers handbook, just next to the one which warns you not to do anything the pit stop boys do, that outlines the 3 videos you can make once a year that will almost certainly get you views. You have the pre-season predictions video, the F1 is making me want to kill myself video, and the driver predictions for next season. And look where we are now. There was a time where these would emerge around the summer break every season, but as Red Bull have seemingly become more and more dominant, clearly we need something else to entertain ourselves. But in fairness, this year, things could actually be exciting. The 2024 driver market had about as much life as O.J. Simpson this week, with no driver changes over the off-season for the first time in Formula 1 history. Now we've suffered through that pain though, it's set up a fascinating battlefield for this year, and one that could still get even more ridiculous if Verstappen here chooses to hit the nuclear button. With so much opportunity for change, I'll most likely be more wrong on these than ever before, so do let me know your lineups down in the comments below, and with that said, let's get into this. So we better start by ticking off the teams who already have both drivers under contract for 2025. So far, we know McLaren still have Norris and Piastri locked up in their bondage dungeon, while Ferrari have snagged #blessed from Mercedes and have Charles Leclerc locked down until the end of time. Additionally, this week Aston Martin confirmed their 2025 lineup with Lance Stroll, who was no real surprise, and Fernando Alonso, who rather was. That said, I already predicted this correctly in my last video, which is a very rare occasion, so I'm going to take that win. We're left then with 7 teams to fill out, so where better to start than with the reigning world champions of being Alpine. We probably should have realised just how bad this season was going to be when it came out in pre-season that both Esteban Ocon and Pierre Gasly wanted to leave, which is a good sign, isn't it? Go back just a couple of years and both drivers, Gasly in particular, were high in demand on the driver market, but more recently, I feel that attention seems to have dropped somewhat, so while they may want to leave, I can't really see anyone else on the grid taking either of them. I've seen Jack Doohan's name floating around if the team did find themselves in need of a new driver, and while I rate the guy, I don't really see him as a long-term F1 prospect. I would have said Victor Martins would have been more appealing, but his start in F2 has been particularly French, it has to be said. So all in all then, I'm going to stick rather than twist at Alpine. Now let's get to the actual world champions, Red Bull Racing. I'm not going to build up any more suspense. If it hasn't been clear for many of my previous videos, I don't think Max Verstappen is going anywhere in 2025. Moving to any other team at this point would be a very special move, and I don't mean that as a compliment. So who lines up alongside the Dutchman? Well, you know me and how much I love Daniel Ricciardo, so let's stick him in there. Right, now let's take him out because I'm not a fucking idiot. It's been a poor start to the season for the Honey Badger, and even though we're only 4 rounds in, any chance of returning to the top team has gone up in a plume of Japanese gravel trap. Yuki Tsunoda has instead been the star of that RB outfit, but I really don't see him moving up either. Instead, I'm going to do the one thing I never expected myself to do at the start of the season, and that's to keep Sergio Perez where he is. Now just hear me out for a minute. The Mexican's track record is not too dissimilar to the flight path of a 737 MAX, in that it starts full of hope and promise, only to nosedive into the sea and kill all on board. This year was supposed to be different, Checo making several changes over the off-season, and so far, they appear to have worked. Qualifying can still do with a little bit of work on the consistency front, but in 3 of the 4 races this season, Perez has followed Verstappen home in P2 on race day. Admittedly, the one time he wasn't backing up his teammate was when the team kind of needed him to be, but a 75% success rate is probably acceptable for Red Bull if he can keep that up over a season. That nosedive may still come later in the year, but I'm not a time traveller and can only go off what I can see so far. So let's lock Max and Checo in for at least one more year in 2025. Let's move on to Mercedes then, who will likely be touting themselves for a return to winning ways in 2025 for the 4th year in a row. With Hamilton finally getting fed up with this bullshit, that leaves one spot open at the Brackley outfit alongside BTEC Jesus here. And straight away, I don't think this is going to be Kimi Antonelli. If you somehow got this far into the season without hearing the man's name, the Italian is currently the latest in the line of the next coming of Max Verstappen's. And as sarcastic as I'm being here, his track record thus far is bloody impressive, but stepping up straight into a Mercedes, that's a recipe for disaster. There are 2 reasons for this. One, while the Silver Arrows are pretty much a midfield team now, they still think they're front runners and apply all the pressure that a front-running team do upon its drivers. Secondly, whilst Kimi's start in Formula 2 this year hasn't really been aided by his Prema outfit, forgetting how to be a good F2 team, he's not necessarily been consistent either. There are flashes of paces here and there, but I think Antonelli needs to follow in the path of George Russell here. So while he'll make it onto this grid, it won't be with Mercedes. In that case, who does get that seat? Well, recent paddock rumours would suggest that Carlos Sainz will be in silver for 2025, and I can't really see why that shouldn't happen. The Spaniard has made a phenomenal start to this year, snatching a win and 2 podiums so far, despite missing Saudi Arabia with appendicitis and driving one-handed every lap to stick his middle finger up at Freddie V on the pit wall. With Red Bull sticking with what they have and Audi/Stake being about as appealing as getting leukemia, this is probably the best step down Carlos can go for, when he really shouldn't have to in the first place, but you'll just see in 2025. Let's take a minute then to return back to Antonelli, and I won't waste any more of your time with this one, as you've probably already worked out where I'm putting him by this point. Williams already have Alex Albon under contract for next season, and while I think he'd be a great fit for a top team like Red Bull or sort of Mercedes, he's now grown out of puberty. James Vowles has his fangs locked into the Thai driver and doesn't want an excuse to retain Logan Sargent again. I'm placing Antonelli here alongside Alex in a move that mimics Russell's debut for the Grove-based team back in 2019. Let the Italian nurture slightly lower down the grid, and then you can think about promoting him up to the main outfit. As for Sargent, you'll probably find him in a wall somewhere. I think I've covered the boring or predictable seats now, so it's time for me to make a real tit out of myself and get onto RB. Yuki Tsunoda and Daniel Ricciardo are battling for their futures now, and even though we're just 4 rounds into the season, it looks as if that battle has already been lost for the Honey Badger. Tsunoda has quietly improved year on year and is now a shadow of the sweary, crash-prone midget who couldn't even complete a qualifying lap in 2021. I still think he's a long-term prospect for Honda when they switch to Aston Martin in 2026, but with no opportunity there or anywhere else on the grid now, he can just stay put and build that RB team around him, a bit like his ex-love interest Gasly did a few years ago. Driving alongside him will be Liam Lawson. Helmut Marko is currently spending the last of his credibility rubbing one off to the Kiwi, and in fairness, he has good reason to, given his excellent stand-in performances for the one-handed Ricciardo at the back end of last season. Red Bull practically promised him a drive after that, so let's stick him alongside Yuki in that RB team for 2025. We're making pretty decent headway now, just 2 teams left to go, and let's start with Haas, who I think have a pretty solid driver lineup, but want to change it anyway. Hülkenberg and Magnussen were a duo who, given their history, many doubted to work well together, but so far their teamwork has secured some crucial points early in the season, even if their tactics have been questionable at times. That said, after first running Ollie Bearman in FP1s at the end of 2023, the team have been full of praise for the young British driver. Add in his excellent stand-in performance at Saudi Arabia earlier this year, and surely he's a shoo-in for one of those seats, which leaves us having to pick between K-Mag and the Hulk for who fits into that second car. I think the easy answer here is to go with the German. He's made a rapid return to the sport after a few years away, and has trounced Magnussen, particularly in qualifying. He could in theory save his current teammate by being swayed away by someone like Audi, but again, leukemia. So let's put Bearman alongside Hülkenberg at Haas in 2025, with Magnussen falling off the grid, and everyone hoping the team do better with a rookie than they did a few years ago. That leaves us with Audi/Stake/Kick/Sauber/whatever the f they're allowed to be called at the next Grand Prix, and this one really could go a million different ways. Slow is most certainly gone after this year. The Chinese driver has made steady progress, but at the end of the day is about as exciting as one of Danica Patrick's opinions. Bottas, meanwhile, wants to stay, for some reason, and while I don't actually think the team have the fin in their long-term plans, they may have no choice in this instance. Thing is, the Sauber team have made such fools out of themselves recently, I'm struggling to see a driver who wants to drive in that outfit in its current guise. My predictions so far have seen potential targets like Sainz and Hülkenberg go elsewhere, and while you may want to throw in their love child Théo Pourchaire into the mix, his journey of self-discovery in Super Formula this year has so far resulted in the P18 at the opening round. This is the seat I'm so torn over, and I think given where the team are, putting a rookie in is probably the best play right now. So let's take a bit of a punt and go with the boy from Barbados himself, Zane Maloney. If that's not a name you're familiar with, then I don't particularly blame you. Zane is in his sophomore year of Formula 2 right now, and after being dropped by the Red Bull Academy at the end of last season, expectations weren't necessarily high. Maloney found a lifeline in Sauber's junior program for this year, and proceeded to win both races in the opening round at Bahrain. He's never left the top 10 since, and at this early point in the season, looks like a serious championship contender. He'll have to continue showing that form if he wants a Formula 1 drive next year, but right now, I don't see a better option for that Sauber team. Well, there you have it then. 10 teams, 20 drivers, most of which are going to be completely wrong in a matter of weeks. Still, I've got my views, so I don't care. That said, if you're here and enjoyed the video, please do like and subscribe. As I said at the beginning, let me know your lineup predictions below in the comments, and feel free to consult mine for how bad they are. A huge thanks goes out to my patrons and channel members for all of their continued support, and if you'd like to get involved in that and get early access or previews to my videos, then all the relevant links can be found down in the description below. I'll see you guys next week for the Chinese Grand Prix comedy review, but until then, have a good one.